Near mint condition, the home of collected editions.
And check out that eye, that's exactly what we want to see. Woo, look at that panel, baby. And that, as they say, is that. Hello everyone, this is the Uncanny Omar from Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions. Today, I'm going to be giving my overview of the Atlas Artist Edition #1, the Joe Maneely volume. So let's go ahead and get started. And welcome back, everybody. Before going any further, a big thank you to the folks at Fantagraphics for sending us a copy of this Artist Edition. Now, it was you all that brought this to my attention whenever I was doing overviews of Fantagraphics books, particularly the Al Williamson book, which is the Atlas Artist Edition #2. And you all asked what my opinion of this was, because I think a few years ago, there was a reprint of the Black Knight comic, which has been reprinted many times, like in a Marvel Superheroes issues, and then, of course, Marvel Masterworks. But I just fell in love with Joe Maneely's art, and I started going down that sad rabbit hole, as we'll see here in a little bit why. But thank you all. So yeah, thank you to Fantagraphics for sending us our way. So this is my overview of this book and what I think of these stories, and, of course, the artwork. First order of business, let's go ahead and put it right beside that other Atlas Artist Edition, the Al Williamson #2. So here we have Atlas logo up here, Atlas Artist Edition #1, Joe Maneely, The Raving Maniac, and Other Stories, and the Fantagraphics logo down there. So this is the way it will look on your shelf. But in case you don't have that book or have ever seen one of these books, here it is compared to the size of a Marvel Omnibus. You can see how much taller and longer it is than this particular one. So even looking at the spine of the book right here, just to kind of give you an idea of just how much bigger it is. But let's go ahead and look at the back of the book right here with this, one of the very few pieces that he did for superheroes, and that is that picture of Namor right here. The Fantagraphics logo, the Marvel logo, and then the retail price, this being $75. And this gives you the idea of what this is, and this being the debut-ish volume of the Fantagraphics Artist Editions. Now, when most people think of Artist Editions, I think because of course, Scott Dunbier and everything he's done at IDW, and now, of course, Image Comics, Artist Editions are like those reproductions of the original papers, or the pages that the artist drew. And this is a lot different. This is more of a collection of stories, kind of like the Marvel Masterworks and other collections that Fantagraphics have done. So don't get this mistaken with like those artist editions. So there's the Black Knight, by the way. Let's go ahead and get this open and talk about some of the stories in here and the history of Joe Maneely. Let's go ahead and get this opened. Here are the end sheets, the Atlas era, with this big mashup of characters that Joe Maneely did. The Atlas Artist Edition #1 featuring Joe Maneely. He's the one that kicked it off, because this book has been 20 years in the making before this came out. By the way, this came out in 2024. And one name that I love seeing is the editor there, and that is Dr. Michael J. Vassallo. And over here, he dedicates this entire book to his dear friend Nancy Maneely and her sisters Kathleen and Mary Carroll. A dream that took 20 years to make, but here we finally are, curated a selection of stories from Joe Maneely's stint at Atlas Comics, The Raving Maniac, and Other Stories. One of the most exciting things that happened was when Marvel and Fantagraphics announced that they were going to be working together on something like this, is that they released a free comic book day, like a single issue, and it did have the Raving Maniac story in there, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. And I was like, oh man, this is really what's gonna come from Fantagraphics. A lot of people were disappointed that the Marvel Masterworks weren't going back to the Atlas era. They were focusing more on the superhero era from the Silver Age, and then of course moving on to the Bronze Age. And now we have the hashtag Save the Masterworks movement. But it seems like more and more that Marvel distanced themselves, not because they wanted to, probably because it's just lack of time and people as well, from this era. And now Fantagraphics is working with Marvel to bring back a lot of these classic stories. So here we have the breakdown, table of contents. I love the fact that this is published, or the way that these stories are collected, are in the way that the artist handed them in whenever because you'll see through here, like very much like you've seen in classic Marvel books, that the very first page will usually have a letter and a number, and that's kind of how they go back and give you a chronological order of the way these stories were originally drawn. So not publishing order necessarily, but it will give you a breakdown of when these issues originally came out, where the issue was from, and of course, when they could, who the writer was, because we're still in that 1950s era, where there wasn't a lot of credits being given. Forget the colors and the letter, man. That didn't happen until later. But from time to time, doing research, as Dr. Vassallo does, he found out who some of the writers were. Of course, most of these Stan Lee, when we're getting into the actual Atlas era, as Time Lee is coming to an end. And if you're not familiar with the gentleman, Joe Maneely, the introduction here, this wonderful, wonderful introduction, does not miss a beat as far as like catching you up to speed as to who he was and the importance of his art. I love this right here. I love that we have this Black Knight piece right there, and where he started, when he got married, how he worked with Walt Kelly at Pogo, went to the military, went to art school, and then came out and started doing just different type of comic strip type of art, and then eventually moving over to the Timely magazine, which was about to transition into the Atlas era of comics, and then working with, of course, Stan Lee. It'll talk about his wedding, his honeymoon. I mean, this is I know it's not everything. I'm sorry. It is the most historical account, at least that I know of Joe Maneely. It talks about the birth of his first daughter, second and third daughter, and then, of course, the end of Atlas and how they had to let everybody go, but Stan Lee. And what was to come, like right around the corner. Of course, we're looking at the beginning of the superhero era, the Silver Age era, and what could have been if Joe Maneely was still alive. I love reading stuff like this. So let's actually go ahead and start looking in here. So it kicks off with a Kid Colt issue. This is really cool because when you think of Joe Maneely, or maybe when I did, I thought of Joe Maneely as like drawing a lot of westerns, and that was what I was going to be getting out of this particular collection. But really what you're getting in here are 16 stories from the horror and fantasy and sci-fi genre, and then you get just 10 western stories. You'll have, I think it's like 4 war stories, maybe it's 5 war stories, and then there's some like comedic stuff in here. Like there's like a Dennis the Menace type of story in here. There's like 3 of those in here, and then there's a section just for the covers. This story right here is one of the sci-fi stories. This is about Captain Lon Derrick taking possession of the planet Juna, and he gets to meet Helena, Empress. This is coming from the Venus comic. So again, not everything is Western, not everything is horror, not everything is war stories. This right here happens to be a horror story that is so good. And you'll see like his art just changing up a little bit to get to that point of where I fell in love with it, which is the Black Knight. So a little bit of why I was really excited to read this, and I, for some reason, missed out on it, and thank you all that pointed out in that video that there had been a Joe Maneely release. I had read so many reprints of that Black Knight #1, and the last time it appeared, I think it was in a, what was it? Was it an Avengers Epic Collection, or maybe it was an Avengers Masterwork? They reprinted the Black Knight #1, and I thought, this was years ago, well, let me go see what happened to Joe Maneely. I don't remember seeing his name like everybody else, like Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby, Gene Colan, during that beginning of the Silver Age for Marvel superheroes. And sadly enough, I found out that he lived a really short life. He died at the age of 32, right around the time, I mean, he died, when was it? It was like June of 1958. And this is all explained at the very beginning. It was a horrible accident after the whole, after everybody ended up losing their jobs at Atlas, he went out with a couple of people, and one of them was John Severin. I think George Ward maybe was the other one that was supposed to have been there for a night just to have some drinks. He had lost his glasses, and on the train back to his home, he had stepped out and apparently fell in between the cars and passed away. And it's crazy that at the age of 32, he was able to produce so many comics and so many covers, which we'll look at in a little bit. And I remember finding that out, and I was really wrecked because I was thinking, just like I think a lot of people, I think there are even videos about this. I know my buddy Taylor Talks Comics has mentioned this too, and I know the guys at Ed Pisker and Jim Rugg at Cartoonist Kayfabe have talked about what could have happened to the Silver Age had Joe Meneely stayed alive. How it would have been different. I mean, you look at stuff like this, and you can completely see him doing the Fantastic Four type of comics instead of Jack Kirby. Like that Marvel era, that Silver Age era of Marvel Comics would have been so different if it had been Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko, and Joe Meneely. Like, forget it, man. It would have been crazy. The war stories are unique here because some of them are actually based on true accounts. Some of the names had changed. But you'll see supernatural tales through here. You'll see vampire tales. You'll see witches. Like this one, for example, right here, Rain. It's all names and places in these true-to-life stories are fictitious. Any similarity between actual persons or places and those used in these stories is purely coincidental. And let's actually get to, like, the name of the book. I love the way he draws this. He would have been a perfect EC artist. Like, then again, where EC Comics went. And some of the stories in here were before the Comics Code, and then some after. So this is the one, the Raving Maniac. It's all about this editor publishing comics, and it's almost like a reply back to the Seduction of the Innocent and the Comics Code, speaking of the Comics Code, and some of the changes that had to be made. But in here, you're going to see some sci-fi stories, as I mentioned, some horror stories. Your Name is Frankenstein, so some classic monsters through here. And all done in this wonderful Joe Meneely art style that you'll see him change until he gets to this right here. And when he gets to the Black Knight, oh man, this stuff is just so damn good. Just the attention to detail. And apparently, he didn't pencil like finished faces and detailed backgrounds and things like that. He would just pencil almost like a stick drawing is what people said, or like an oval shape with a couple dots, and it's his inks is how he would draw. He would draw with inks, and I thought that was really cool because if he knew he was going to be the finisher and embellisher or inker, then he was just kind of doing a layout and then going over it with inks. I mean, you still have to be sure of yourself to be doing stuff like this. But yeah, this is the story that's been collected before, and then we have the Crusader back here. And we actually have his final drawing that he did, and because apparently he passed away with his portfolio in his hands. That's crazy. The 17-year twitch. Absolutely nothing to do with a Marilyn Monroe movie, and any similarities is just pure coincidence. Pascal the Rascal. This is the Dennis the Menace type of story. It's about a dad that's trying to make a comic strip to feed his family. Obviously very Dennis the Menace, right? This is actually his final story, if I'm not mistaken. Nope, I guess it wasn't. I am mistaken. The Coming of the Yellow Claw. How could I forget about that? Of course, a character that would be heavily used later on, especially in Steranko's Shield. And this is the final one, the Two Gun Kid, because then he did one page right here. He didn't get to finish this story. That's so sad. I think it was Jack Davis that ended up finishing this story, but that's the splash page and T67. And right around the corner was, of course, the Fantastic Four. So here's the cover gallery. I don't think it's all his covers, but it's some of them. Look at that Black Knight, man. Now, Black Knight actually had a Marvel Masterworks and the Submariner covers right there. He only did a few of those. And then, of course, the Two Gun Kid. He did, I think, a couple of things for DC. Most of it was like the House of Secrets and House of Mystery and the end sheets. So let's look at the binding really quick, and then of course the type of paper they're using and the restoration. 256 pages, and it is sewn binding. It is printed like the Atlas Volume 2 or Number 2, Artist Edition Number 2. It is printed in this glossy paper stock. It's not like the high gloss, but it is still glossy paper stock. And as far as the restoration of the artwork in here, it's not like the Marvel Masterworks. They don't use like the scans and completely do art restoration. It's more like the scans of the original art, I'm sorry. It's the scans of the single issues. Sometimes it's like a photo scan, and they do minimal restoration. So there is a little bit of restoration, but this is truer to the original art than whenever they do the recolors and touch things up. Surprising, I think I probably said this with Artist Edition Number 2, the Al Williamson one. They used a glossy paper stock instead of like the matte paper. Not sure why, but these guys know better than I do. But that's it. That's what the Joe Maneely Artist Edition Number 1 is. And that, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing this Artist Edition, don't forget to check out our sponsors.
If you're in Europe and you're interested in buying these books, definitely check out Walt's Comic Shop in Berlin, Germany. They have the cheapest pre-order prices, flat shipping rate of €12 for all EU countries, emails answered within 24 hours, waltscomicshop.com, and you can use the code nearmintcondition at checkout and get free shipping for all EU countries with your first order over €40. That's Walt's Comic Shop, your reliable source for omnis and premium collected editions in Europe. Ding!
CheapGraphicNovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget that CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more.
And that was the content, the page count, and build of this Fantagraphics release of the Atlas era. If you have any questions, leave them down below. Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, and ring that bell for notifications. Let you know when our videos are going up. We do put out videos once, twice, sometimes 3 times a day. And of course, we also have our live videos every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, where you can come in with any kind of question you have. But that is it, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.